Did you know that as early as 1989, the federal government had been formulating a plan in order to send astronauts to Mars? In a magazine article written in 1991, the famous astrophysicist Carl Sagan wrote about how President Bush at the time was already interested in looking past the space shuttle program and looking ahead to a future where NASA had placed astronauts on Mars by the 2020s. Now, here's why I'm qualified to give this speech. I am a huge space fan. I love reading about NASA history and the inner workings and behind the scenes stories of antique spaceflight. In this speech, I will be discussing the exploration of Mars. I will be addressing three main points. First, the history of Mars exploration, some of the key discoveries that have been made. Second, I will be discussing the results of those missions and why they're important. And lastly, I will be discussing what the future holds for the exploration of Mars. Now, when people think of Mars exploration, they might think of rovers on the surface or satellites orbiting the planet. But Mars exploration officially began in 1610 when the astronomer Galileo Galilei first observed the planet using a telescope with 20 times magnification. Other ancient astronomers include Giovanni Donatello Cassini. He first recorded the distance between Earth and Mars, and Christopher Huygens measured the length of the day on Mars, which is about 24 hours, which is almost the same as a day on Earth. The modern era of Mars exploration began in 1965 when the American probe Mariner 4 conducted a flyby of Mars, taking pictures of the surface. It observed that Mars had a lot of craters on the surface, but it didn't detect any presence of canals, which would indicate water on the surface of Mars. Later, Mariner missions conducted flybys and went into orbit around Mars. They confirmed the absence of canals. And another mission of note was 1976, the Viking lander was the first American spacecraft to land on the surface of Mars. Here is a picture of Galileo, and here is a picture of the Viking lander. Now, what have we gained from the exploration of Mars? Well, in 2015, the Geological Society of America conducted their annual meeting, and from this meeting, a report was generated by researchers from institutes such as Washington University and NASA Johnson Space Center, and their report discussed the Opportunity rover and what it had discovered near the rim of the Endeavour crater on Mars. And what it had found was that the shape of the crater's rim was such that it had been formed, at least in part, by the presence of a liquid moving across its surface, which could have been evidence of water being on the surface of Mars at one point in time. The April 2017 issue of Sky and Telescope magazine discussed the Curiosity rover and the things that it has found on the surface of Mars. One of the first things it discovered was near its landing site. It discovered a formation of sedimentary rock. Now, sedimentary rock is formed when water moves along a surface and deposits particles and sediment in a certain spot, and over time, these particles collect into rock formations. And if these types of rocks are present on Mars, then it could indicate the presence of water on Mars, further strengthening the case for water on Mars. Additionally, when it reached the end goal of its mission, which was the base of Mount Sharp, it found a mudstone structure. A mudstone is formed in the presence of water, which is even further indication that Mars may contain liquid water. So what does the future hold for Mars exploration? Well, one big thing in the future exploration of Mars is the private industry. For example, the company SpaceX, founded by the CEO of Tesla, Elon Musk, plans to have people on Mars by 2030. Now, in a 2016 October Reddit Ask Me Anything session, according to ABC News, SpaceX founder Elon Musk went online to answer questions from people who wanted to learn more about SpaceX's priorities or what they hope to accomplish on Mars. And some of the things he said was that SpaceX hopes to establish a self-sustaining colony, meaning that the first couple missions they send to Mars will really just be cargo missions in order to set up an infrastructure for a Mars mission, and then later missions will contain more astronauts in order to start populating that colony that has been previously set up. Now, NASA doesn't want to be left out of things, and they've announced plans for their Mars 2020 rover, which is another rover designed to land on the surface of Mars. And according to a 2014 technical report from NASA, this mission will have three main objectives: to continue searching for signs of life on Mars, to explore new technology necessary to land humans on Mars, such as new parachute designs, but third and most importantly, they hope to return a sample of Martian rock and soil to Earth for further study. And this will be the first time that a Martian sample has been returned to Earth. So, in conclusion, I hope you enjoyed my speech and learned a little something about Mars exploration. One quote to leave you with comes from none other than Buzz Lightyear in the first Toy Story movie, when he said, "How dare you open a spaceman's helmet on an uncharted planet? My eyeballs could have been sucked from their sockets." And hopefully this doesn't happen to any SpaceX or NASA astronaut in the future. And again, thank you for your time.